Welcome, beloved anointed ones. Never lower your frequency just to raise their comfort level. That's not evolution. That's self-erasure. Let's be brutally honest here. Some people don't hate you because you're rude, arrogant, or too much. They hate you because you refuse to dumb yourself down just to make them feel smart. And that silent rebellion? Oh, it's driving them absolutely insane. Here's a fact. Studies show that highly intelligent or spiritually advanced individuals often experience social rejection, not because they're disliked, but because their very presence challenges the group's dominant norm. Translation? Your energy doesn't just enter rooms, it interrogates them. You didn't try to outshine them, you just stopped pretending to be dim. And now the fake laughs have dried up. The group chats feel awkward, and people who once loved your vibe suddenly say you've changed. But let's be real. You didn't change. You just stopped apologizing for being deep in a shallow world. And now, they're mad. Like really mad. The kind of mad that makes people squint at you in the group setting like they're trying to figure out if you're a person or a prophecy. So in this video, we're pulling no punches. We're diving into exactly why your refusal to shrink, sugarcoat, or play stupid is upsetting the fragile egos around you. Why your authenticity is seen as arrogance. Why your depth is mistaken for detachment, and why, no matter how much they gossip, withdraw, or glare at you across the room, you must never, ever lower your frequency just to be invited to their table of delusions. Let's talk about it, because this one, it's going to set a lot of people free and expose a few fakes along the way. Number one, you're a walking mirror. They didn't ask to see. They're not mad at how you speak, dress, or walk. What really grinds their gears is that being around you forces them to see what they've been avoiding in themselves. You didn't insult them, you didn't disrespect them, but the truth is, you didn't have to. Your presence alone is enough. You walk into the room, and suddenly, they remember all the things they never became. You represent the discipline they avoided, the honesty they buried, the healing they postponed. And the worst part for them, you're not even trying to prove anything. That's what makes it unbearable for them. You're not showing off, you're just showing up. And yet somehow, everything about you feels like a personal attack to them. Why? Because your authenticity highlights their performance. Your clarity exposes their confusion. Your refusal to gossip, complain, or pretend forces them to face the fact that they've been playing roles just to feel accepted. And while they keep dancing for approval, you sit in your truth, undisturbed. That's what really pisses them off. They thought if you didn't dumb yourself down, you'd be alone, rejected, or miserable. But now they see you glowing in your own lane, surrounded by peace instead of pretense. You made the bold decision to stop lowering yourself to fit in, and that decision has become a spotlight on their own compromises, and they can't stand it. Not because you're wrong, but because you're free. People don't get triggered by lies, they get triggered by truth. And you are a walking mirror. Every move you make silently asks them, why are you still pretending? And for someone who's been wearing a mask for years, that's a hard question to dodge. So no, you're not arrogant, you're not antisocial, you're not too deep. You're just refusing to play small so other people can feel big. You won't shrink your soul just to soothe their ego. And while they sit in circles mocking your standards, they secretly wish they had your courage. Because deep down, they know. You didn't change the room with noise, you changed it with presence. And that kind of power? They can't copy it, so they criticize it. Number two, dumbing down is a form of spiritual suicide, and you refuse to die for their comfort. There comes a point when you realize that pretending to be less intelligent, less aware, or less awakened, just to make people comfortable, is the slowest way to kill your soul. That's what dumbing yourself down really is. A form of spiritual suicide, and you refuse to die for their comfort. You could have played along. You could have laughed at jokes that weren't funny, nodded to opinions you didn't believe in, and lowered your standards just to feel included. But something inside you said no, not because you thought you were better than anyone, but because deep down you knew that shrinking yourself would come at a cost you weren't willing to pay. What people don't understand is that every time you hide your light to keep others from feeling insecure, a piece of you dims. And after a while, that dimming becomes normal. You start doubting your own insight. You start second-guessing your own wisdom. You become a background version of yourself. And for what? To sit at tables that only serve ego and insecurity? To be accepted by people who fear the very truth you were born to carry? You didn't refuse to dumb yourself down because you're prideful. You did it because you realized that your peace, your sanity, your calling, they all live at the level of your full self, not your filtered self. And if that means some people distance themselves, so be it. You weren't created to babysit people's triggers. You weren't sent here to dilute your voice so others can feel louder in their mediocrity. When people say you're hard to connect with or too intense, they're not describing you. They're revealing how far they are from themselves. Your clarity makes their confusion uncomfortable. Your refusal to fake it makes their pretending harder to justify. You could have made life easier by playing small, but you chose alignment over acceptance. And that right there, that's where your real power comes from. Not from showing off, but from showing up fully and refusing to participate in the silent agreement to stay asleep. They can call it arrogance, but the truth is, you simply chose not to betray yourself, and that decision changed everything. Number 3, they want access to you, but only if they can mute your power first. They don't hate your intelligence. They hate that they can't control it. They don't mind your light as long as they can dim it when it gets too bright. The real issue isn't that you're too deep, too wise, or too evolved. The issue is that they want access to you without being confronted by what you carry. They want the benefit of being around your energy, your insight, your clarity, but only if they can shape it, tone it down, and water it to their level. And the moment they realize you're not going to let them domesticate your power, that's when the resentment starts to build. You see, a lot of people only like you when you're manageable, when your wisdom comes with a little self-doubt, when your confidence is dressed up in self-deprecating humor, when your gifts are wrapped in insecurity. That way, they can feel safe next to you. That way, they still feel like they're the smartest or most influential person in the room. But when you stop apologizing for what you know, when you stop asking for permission to speak from your truth, everything changes. Suddenly, they feel threatened. Suddenly, you're too much, full of yourself, or on some spiritual stuff now. The irony is, they never really had a problem with you. They just had a problem with not being able to control the version of you they preferred. They wanted your gifts as long as they could take credit for them. They wanted your presence as long as you stayed quiet. But the moment you showed up fully, without shrinking, without censoring, without waiting for their approval, they realized they were never truly rooting for you. They were rooting for a version of you that would make them feel better about themselves. When they couldn't dilute you, they tried to discredit you. That's the next move. Start rumors, talk behind your back, call you fake or arrogant, whatever it takes to make others question what they can't control. But none of it sticks, because truth doesn't need to defend itself, and real ones can feel the difference. So let them be mad. Let them misunderstand. You weren't born to be edited. And anyone who needs you smaller in order to love you never loved you to begin with. Number 4, you don't fit in because you were sent to break generational curses, not maintain them. You were never meant to fit in, and deep down you've always known it. From a young age, you could feel the tension between who you were and what was expected of you, the family patterns, the toxic behaviors, the silent rules that no one questioned. None of it ever sat right with your spirit. They called it tradition. You saw it as spiritual bondage, and that's the real reason you've always felt like an outsider. You weren't sent here to keep the cycle going. You were sent here to break it. When you choose healing over silence, boundaries over people-pleasing, truth over comfort, you instantly become a threat to the system that raised you. And the moment you start questioning the very things they swore to protect, they call you rebellious, disrespectful, difficult. But you are not any of those things. You are awake. You are aware. You are chosen to interrupt what has been tolerated for far too long. You are not rejecting them. You are rejecting the dysfunction that became normal to them. You are not better than them, but you are brave enough to face what they continue to avoid. That's not arrogance. That's alignment. You are not here to blend in at tables where gossip passes for bonding and fake love is used as a disguise for control. You are here to break the silence, to name the patterns. to set the boundaries they never had the courage to set. People don't get uncomfortable with you because you are loud. They get uncomfortable because your presence forces a pause in the performance. You do not speak the language of trauma anymore. You do not find humor in dysfunction, and that makes them feel exposed. You are no longer entertaining generational pain dressed up as personality. You are choosing peace, clarity, truth. And they are not ready to do the same, so yes, you are different. You're not meant to blend in. You were never created to maintain broken systems. You were sent to disrupt them. Your very life is a declaration that the curse stops here. And even if they never applaud you for it, heaven already has. Number 5. Your intelligence isn't just mental, it's ancestral and spiritual. People love to label what they don't understand. So when your intelligence doesn't fit their version of normal, they slap words on it. Too deep, too intense, too analytical, too much. But what they don't realize is that your intelligence isn't just something you read in books or picked up in school. It's spiritual. It's ancestral. It's encoded in you. What you know, what you sense, is the result of wisdom passed down through generations, rooted in things your bloodline survived, endured, and overcame. And that's why they can't figure you out, because you weren't taught like them. You were born knowing things they still struggle to see. It's not just intellect, it's insight, it's discernment. It's the kind of awareness that can walk into a room and feel when something's off without anyone saying a word. You catch patterns in conversations, shifts in people's energy, contradictions in their behavior, and you do it without trying. That's not coincidence. That's coding. You've been spiritually wired to carry certain truths, and whether they like it or not, it shows. The real problem is that your mind can't be manipulated. You don't just go along with whatever's trending. You ask questions, you think critically. You connect dots that others pretend not to see. And for people who rely on groupthink and shallow narratives, your depth is threatening. They can't control it, they can't predict it, and they definitely can't fake it. So instead, they reject it. They insult it. They turn you into the problem because they don't have the capacity to understand the solution you represent. You're not trying to be complicated. You're just not built for surface-level living. You're tuned into a higher frequency, one that most people were never taught to recognize, so they attack what they can't decode. They push you away because your very existence confronts their intellectual laziness and spiritual apathy. But your intelligence, it's not up for debate. It's divine. It's earned. It's inherited. You didn't ask for it. It chose you. And as heavy as it may feel sometimes, never forget, you were chosen to carry what others couldn't even comprehend. So no, you're not too much. You're too real for people still stuck in mental quicksand. Let them talk. You've got soul work to do. Number 6. They'd rather you be funny and harmless than focused and unapologetic. People love you when you're easy to digest. When you're cracking jokes, downplaying your intelligence, making yourself the punchline, you feel safe to them. You're the life of the party, the one who keeps things light, the one they can laugh with and laugh at. But the second you stop doing that, when you get serious about your purpose, when you become focused and unapologetic about your growth, they don't know how to handle you anymore. Suddenly you're intimidating. Suddenly you're arrogant. Suddenly you've changed. What really happened is you stopped performing. You stopped using humor and self-deprecation as a way to make everyone else comfortable. You decided that your energy was too valuable to waste on proving you're relatable. And the people who loved the old you struggle with that because the old you was easier for them to control. The old you didn't call them higher. The old you didn't make them look at the ways they've stayed stagnant. The old you was less of a mirror. It's not that you've become unkind or cold. You've simply shifted. You've realized that you don't owe anyone your constant entertainment or emotional labor. You're not going to dim your drive or laugh off your vision just so others don't feel small in comparison. And that shift exposes who was really for you and who was just for your convenience. People who are secure in themselves will celebrate your seriousness. They'll understand that focus isn't arrogance, it's alignment. But those who depended on the harmless version of you will feel threatened. They'll misinterpret your silence as judgment. They'll call you distant, unapproachable, or too full of yourself, not because it's true, but because they can't access you the way they used to. The truth is, they miss the version of you that made them feel better about where they are. They miss the one who downplayed their own greatness, so no one else would feel insecure. But you can't go back to that. You've outgrown the need to be everyone's comic relief or emotional cushion. You're not here to make people comfortable. You're here to live fully. And if that means they call you intimidating, so be it. They'll get over it or they'll get left behind. Number 7. Small talk feels like a betrayal to your soul. You're not antisocial. You're not standoffish. You're just tired of conversations that go nowhere. The surface-level chatter, the recycled gossip, the endless talk about people instead of ideas, it drains you. Not because you think you're better than anyone, but because your soul knows when it's being starved. Small talk, to you, feels like chewing cardboard. It fills the space, but it doesn't nourish anything. And every time you sit in those shallow exchanges, something inside you whispers, "You don't belong here." You're wired for depth. Your mind naturally reaches for meaning. You crave the kind of dialogue that awakens something, that stretches your perspective, that leads somewhere beyond empty laughter and forced smiles. But in a world obsessed with distraction, that kind of depth makes people uncomfortable. They see your silence in group settings and take it as judgment, when in reality you're just trying to protect your energy from being wasted on noise. While others obsess over trending drama or the latest celebrity scandal, you're watching patterns unfold. You're connecting emotional behaviors to spiritual roots. You're observing how trauma hides in humor, how people disguise their loneliness in loudness, and how conversations become cages when people are afraid to speak the truth. That's the lens you live through. And it makes shallow spaces feel like spiritual suffocation. People get triggered not because you say anything offensive, but because you don't play along. You don't fake interest. You don't nod just to be polite. You don't laugh to blend in. And that refusal to perform socially accepted emptiness, that's what unsettles them. Because most people are comfortable hiding in crowds. You stand out simply by being real. You're not rejecting people. You're rejecting spiritual starvation. You want to talk about purpose, pain, healing, destiny, growth. You want to dive into how people truly feel, what they believe, what they're running from, what keeps them up at night. But most are not ready to go there. They just want to coast on autopilot while you're built to wake people up. So if they call you distant or say you're too serious, let them. You're not here to master the art of small talk. You're here to speak life. And anyone who can't meet you in depth was never meant to keep you in conversation. Number 8. You weren't sent to entertain. You were sent to enlighten. You were never meant to be anyone's distraction or emotional escape. You were not created to play it safe, to be the funny one, the agreeable one, or the one who keeps the peace by keeping quiet. You were sent here with a message, with a purpose, with a presence that carries weight. And that weight is not always comfortable. It is not always fun, but it is necessary. People expected you to entertain them, to lighten the mood, to be soft on their egos and easy on their dysfunction. But you did not show up with entertainment. You showed up with revelation. You were sent to awaken what has been ignored, to stir what has been suppressed, to expose what has been tolerated. You carry a frequency that cuts through illusions, and that kind of presence unsettles people who are used to faking depth and mistaking drama for connection. When you enter a space and speak truth instead of sugarcoating it, people flinch. Not because you were cruel, but because they were expecting comfort, not clarity. They were looking for a distraction, and you gave them a mirror. You are not a performer. You are not here to win people over with charm or charisma. You are here to shift atmospheres. You are here to remind people of who they are and what they have buried under years of pain, fear, and denial. That is not always met with applause. Sometimes it is met with resistance, envy, or silence. But that does not mean you are off course. It means you are right on time. They call you intense because you refuse to play dumb. They say you are unapproachable because you will not fake connection. What they are really saying is that you are not entertaining their illusions, and that bothers them. You are not easily impressed, and you are not easily manipulated. You carry something real. And when people are used to living in performance mode, anything real feels offensive. So let them misunderstand you. Let them label you. You were not sent to play along. You were sent to wake people up. And if that makes you look like the problem in a world that avoids truth, then you are exactly who you were born to be. Number 9. They label you too serious because your depth disarms their deflections. When people call you too serious, what they really mean is, you make it hard for them to pretend. You do not play around with sugar-coated truths or pretend not to notice what is broken just to keep the mood light. You go straight to the root. You speak on what others tiptoe around. And for people who rely on illusions to survive, your depth feels like danger. They do not know how to cope with someone who refuses to play the game. You do not flirt with fantasy. You do not stroke egos. You speak what is real, and you do it without hesitation. You have a way of seeing straight through the performance. You hear what people do not say. You feel what is behind the smile. And the moment you speak, the air shifts. Not because you are trying to make people uncomfortable, but because your presence breaks the script. People use humor, distractions, fake confidence, and surface-level talk to hide from themselves. You walk in, and without even trying, you expose what they have worked so hard to hide. They say you are too intense. They say you are doing too much. But it is not your energy that is the problem. It is their resistance to truth. You are not antisocial. You are not cold. You are just spiritually surgical. You know how to cut through the noise, the pretending, the cycles. And when you do, people bleed. Not physically, but emotionally, spiritually. Their wounds get touched. Their masks fall off. And instead of sitting with what comes up, they blame the one who triggered it, you. But that is the price of being real in a world addicted to pretending. Your seriousness is not the problem. It is your clarity, your honesty, your unwillingness to play along. You do not walk around looking for drama. You are just not afraid to name what no one else wants to admit. That kind of presence is rare. It is powerful, and it is deeply misunderstood. So let them call you too serious. Let them project. You are not here to entertain people's denial. You are here to wake them up. And sometimes the truth does not feel like healing. Sometimes it feels like surgery. Number 10. Your mind terrifies people who've built their lives on denial. Your mind is not loud, it's sharp. And that sharpness cuts through layers of denial that most people have spent their whole lives carefully building. You ask the kind of questions that stop people in their tracks. The ones that expose the contradiction between how they live and what they claim to believe. You see what they try to hide. You notice what they think no one picks up on. And you speak on the things others only dare to think in silence. That kind of mental clarity doesn't just challenge them, it terrifies them. Because denial isn't just a habit for some people, it's their whole identity. They've built their lives on selective memory, half-truths, and emotional avoidance. They keep certain doors in their mind permanently locked because facing what's behind them would mean undoing too much. So when someone like you comes along, someone who's not afraid to go deep, to ask why, to connect dots, they feel threatened. Not because you're doing anything wrong, but because your presence makes it harder for them to keep pretending. You don't accept surface-level answers. You do not smile and nod just to keep the peace. You challenge inconsistencies. You dig into what people avoid, and that makes you dangerous in spaces where illusion is the currency. In rooms where everyone's performing, you walk in and break the fourth wall. You ruin the show, not by attacking, but by simply being real. They can't silence your thoughts. They can't steer your mind into compliance. And because of that, they don't know what to do with you. So they label you as difficult. They distance themselves. They whisper about how you think too much or overanalyze everything. But those are just code words for you see too much, and it scares me. What they don't understand is that your mind is not a weapon. It's a mirror. And mirrors are only painful when people are afraid of what they might see. You didn't choose this kind of awareness just to make people uncomfortable. You carry it because truth is a responsibility. So let them be unsettled. Let them talk. You were not meant to protect their illusions. You were meant to disturb what was never rooted in truth to begin with. Number 11. You outgrew the need to be understood by the unawakened. There comes a moment when you realize you've been wasting your breath. Explaining yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you is not clarity, it's spiritual drain. You tried for years maybe to break yourself down into pieces they could digest. You watered down your truth. You used simple words. You softened your tone. You gave examples. You apologized for your growth. But no matter how much effort you put in, it never landed. Not because you weren't making sense, but because they were never interested in truly hearing you. They weren't listening. They were measuring how different you sounded from what they approved of. You stopped translating your soul into a language they don't even respect. And in doing so, you finally caught your breath. You stopped arguing with people who only show up to debate, not to understand. You stopped over-explaining your intentions to the same ones who twist them on purpose. You realized it was never about you being misunderstood. It was about them being unready, unwilling, or unequipped to understand someone who has stepped outside the program they're still trapped in. That shift cost you. People fell off. Some ghosted you. Some talked about you behind your back. Some stayed close but made it clear they could no longer relate to you. Friends grew silent. Family became cold, and for a moment it stung. It made you question if staying true to yourself was worth it. But over time, something deeper settled in: peace. Not the peace that comes from being liked, but the peace that comes from not needing to be. The unawakened will always be suspicious of what they cannot categorize. They want you simple, agreeable, familiar. You outgrew that version of yourself, and now they are mad, not because you hurt them, but because you no longer fit their comfort zone. You became untouchable, not because you pushed them away, but because you refused to shrink. And here's what they will never admit. Deep down, they know you were right to evolve. They just resent that you had the courage to go where they were too afraid to follow. And that's not your burden to carry. Your purpose is not to be understood by everyone. Your purpose is to walk in truth, even when it walks you alone. Number 12. Your frequency doesn't just repel demons, it exposes them. You are not imagining it. You are not being paranoid. There is a reason the room feels different when you walk in. The conversations change. The atmosphere tightens. People who were just laughing suddenly go quiet. Eyes start shifting. Some avoid you completely while others put on extra charm or forced smiles. That is not awkwardness. That is spiritual exposure. You carry a frequency that does not just repel what is dark, it reveals it. You do not need to say anything. Your presence alone speaks. It shines a light on things people have hidden for years. It confronts energies that have gone unchecked in their circle. It disrupts unspoken agreements of silence, control, manipulation, and deception. And when those forces feel your energy, they panic. They do not know how to operate around someone they cannot manipulate, confuse, or disarm. That is why the mood shifts. That is why the tension rises. Your frequency reveals what people hoped would stay hidden. They say you are judgmental. They call you too deep or too sensitive. But what they really mean is that their spirit is uncomfortable around you, and they do not know how to explain it. So they attack your character to distract from the conviction they feel. You did not expose them by being mean or direct. You exposed them just by showing up. Your energy is aligned with truth, and when truth walks into the room, everything false starts to shake. You were never meant to blend in. You were sent to reveal. That is why people either love you deeply or avoid you entirely. There is rarely any middle ground. People who are pure in heart feel seen around you. People who are hiding something feel attacked, even when you have not said a word. That is how powerful your energy is. It is not about you being perfect. It is about you being spiritually awake in a world that thrives on sleep. And when light walks into darkness, darkness has to respond. So let them call you names. Let them mislabel your discernment as pride. You are not the problem. You are the revealer. And the truth always causes discomfort before it brings deliverance. Number 13. They wanted you to tone it down so they could keep playing dumb. They never truly wanted you humble. They wanted you small. Not because your intelligence was offensive, but because it disrupted the environment they felt comfortable in. You were too aware, too sharp, too clear. Your questions made them nervous. Your insight made them feel exposed. Your wisdom didn't flatter their ego, it challenged it. And for people who have built their reality on denial, your awareness is a threat they cannot ignore. They asked you to tone it down, not out of love, but control. Because when you're at full capacity, speaking truth, connecting dots, calling things out, they can't keep playing dumb. They can't pretend they don't see what's broken. They can't keep laughing off dysfunction or pretending that mediocrity is fine. Your presence demands elevation, and that's uncomfortable for people who are committed to staying stagnant. Instead of rising to meet you, they decided to attack the height. They gaslighted you, called you intense, said you were too deep, too serious, or that you thought you were better than everyone else. But that was never the truth. What they really meant was, "You're making it harder for me to keep lying to myself." You were not trying to be intimidating, you were just refusing to shrink, and that refusal challenged their comfort zone. Not everyone is ready to grow, and many would rather label you the problem than confront their own resistance to change. They wanted you to be smart, but not too smart, aware, but not too awake, confident, but not too bold. Because the moment you operate in your fullness, they are reminded of how much they've avoided doing the same. You didn't change. You just stopped downplaying what you carry. You stopped laughing at what wasn't funny. You stopped pretending not to notice the nonsense. And that shift revealed who was genuinely aligned with you and who was just comfortable with your smaller self. It was never about you being too much. It was about them refusing to rise. Your growth required them to get honest, and instead of doing that, they tried to shrink you back to fit their comfort. But you outgrew the script, and now their fake ignorance has nowhere left to hide. Number 14. You refuse to be digestible in a world addicted to fast food minds. You weren't built for cheap applause or shallow conversations. In a world that runs on sound bites, gossip, and viral nonsense, you chose something different. You offered truth that wasn't sugar-coated, wisdom that couldn't be rushed, and presence that required depth. But people weren't ready for that. They didn't want to slow down and think. They didn't want to feel. They wanted you to be easy to digest, simple, safe, and entertaining. But you refused. You didn't come to spoon-feed spiritual junk food. You came to awaken minds that have been numbed by distraction and deception, and that made you a problem. Not because you were wrong, but because you made people confront how shallow their appetite had become. They were used to fast food, quick opinions, lazy beliefs, and convenient lies. But you served substance. You asked hard questions. You expected reflection. And that kind of nourishment takes work to chew and even more to swallow. So instead of adjusting to your level, they tried to convince you to lower it. They asked why you always had to go so deep. They told you to lighten up or not take things so seriously. But what they were really saying was, "You're making us uncomfortable because you remind us how much we've settled for less." You weren't judging them. You were just being full in a space where everyone else had starved themselves for so long, they forgot what real fullness looked like. And when they couldn't handle it, they turned bitter. Not because you hurt them, but because you wouldn't make it easier to pretend. You didn't shrink, you didn't dumb it down, you didn't swap truth for trends. You honored the depth you came with, and that alone was offensive in a society addicted to spiritual fast food and emotional numbness. You weren't sent to be processed, you were sent to be prophetic. They'll call you hard to chew. They'll say you're too much. But what they really mean is they've gotten used to watered down everything, and your substance disrupted the system. Keep being the banquet. The right ones will pull up a chair and eat. The rest can keep pretending their crumbs are enough. Let them talk. Let them squirm. Let them call you too deep, too much, too serious, or too different now. The truth is, they never hated your depth. They hated what your depth exposed in them. You didn't come to be digestible. You didn't come to perform. You didn't come to entertain people who are addicted to delusion. You came to break cycles, shift atmospheres, and rewire generations with the truth that lives inside you. Every rejection, every side eye, every backhanded compliment wasn't a loss. It was spiritual confirmation. They weren't disturbed because you were wrong. They were disturbed because you were real. You didn't water yourself down, and that alone caused a drought in every fake version of reality they were clinging to. The world may try to shame you for not being palatable, but don't ever confuse bitterness with discernment. You were never supposed to blend in. You were sent to awaken, disrupt, elevate, and expose. The uncomfortable silence you create in a room, that's power. The way people shift when you speak truth without blinking. That's presence. And the fact that you keep rising in a world begging you to shrink, that's legacy. So stay unshrinkable, stay focused, stay unapologetically aligned, because you're not just here to exist. You're here to dismantle everything that pretends to be truth. They wanted comfort, you brought clarity. They wanted a show, you brought the sword. And when the smoke clears, they'll remember one thing clearly: you never bowed. If this message lit something up in your spirit, don't keep it to yourself. Subscribe to the channel right now and hit that notification bell so you never miss another soul-shifting word. Like this video to show love, drop a comment to let us know which part hit the hardest, and share this with someone who's tired of shrinking to fit into spaces they've already outgrown. This isn't just a channel, it's a movement. A home for the deep thinkers, the spiritual disruptors, the ones who refuse to play small. So if that's you, welcome home. Now spread the truth. God bless you.